Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this narration of the web series Very Clever Primitives, taken from Reddit. If you're new to the series, there is a playlist listed down below. And as always, I hope that you enjoy. Chapter 11. I learned a lot about humans and Earth in the few days I'd been there. They are rash, headstrong, and their opinions on their leaders differ from person to person. While my species was mostly unified, these people seem to take pride in what sets them apart. I first began to notice it when Agent Brown and I reached the nearest city to the location of the tiny cabin where my Earthbed was located at. Different parts of the city would have varying architecture and in different states of repair as well. Loud sirens blared in the air as cars raced to and from the many streets. Some of their homes, from what I could tell, would have different colors of flags by the portals inside of their homes. They were flags. Having a flag wasn't an alien notion to me. After all, most Valon had at least one flag somewhere that represented their caste. But the humans were completely different. Humans had more flags with more colors than I could count. It made sense, though, given how different each human was from each other. Even with all of these flags, however, most of their patterns were bland. Portions of the flag would be a whole color, followed by another color and a third. Maybe there was a sigil on the flag somewhere, but for the most part, it was as if someone painted 3 lions on some fabric and proclaimed that they were done. It was somewhat lazy compared to the intricacies of Valan flags. But it would be best not to openly voice those opinions while surrounded by these ruffians. "Do the Valan have music, Scalan?" Agent Brown asked, his hands on the guiding wheel of his land shuttle as we moved through the city streets. I turned my head, looking at him in confusion. "Of course we have music. We're not uncultured. We have art, music, and performing arts. It's not like our entire society dropped beauty in the name of scientific and engineering progress," I said, crossing my arms, sinking a bit into my seat. Well, at least trying to. I'll freely admit I was a bit too tall for human vehicles. "I wasn't saying you did," Agent Brown said, his hand reaching over to the center console of the shuttle. "Want to listen to some human music?" Human music? My head tilted to the side, eyeing the human agent with an inquisitive and, dare I say it, anticipatory look. Why, yes, I did want to listen to human music. The more I thought of it, the more that I realized that, with an entirely different culture, humans would have entirely new, different, and interesting art to share. My quills rose and my scales turned yellow. I was positively giddy at the thought, even as we made our way towards a hospital filled with sick children. I was going to get a taste of human music. Why, yes, I would love to hear some human music. I never hoped to have another human grin at me the way Agent Brown did in that moment. "All right, I'll let you listen to the music I have here. Let's try something timeless," he said, fingers gracing the touchscreen on the center. It took my eyes a while to catch up with what the screen was displaying. First, it sorted by genre. Then he chose rock. Finally, the artist was selected. Someone called Led Zeppelin. Was, it intentionally misspelled? Did humans name their children after metals? How very peculiar. Yet, as soon as he pressed the play button on the touchscreen, my perception of humanity was forever changed. Their music was barbaric, and their humans ate it up. Loud crashing metals, followed by distorted electrical strings, echoed into the shuttle at a volume that would make anyone's ears bleed. My hands clutched over my own as I swiftly changed into a near-neon green with panic. Not only did this maniac have some diabolical wailing, screaming madness playing out into the shuttle, but he only seemed to grow angrier as the song went on. He sang along with the music, looked over to me occasionally, and then proceeded to sing some more. Were I not already crammed into this car like a sardine, I would have probably curled into a ball and waited for death. Needless to say, I was not a fan of Led Zeppelin. "Really?" Agent Brown asked, swiftly turning down the volume of that god's awful noise. He seemed a bit upset as he looked straight ahead. Well, at least as upset as Agent Brown could look. Whenever he displayed too much emotion, it was fairly jarring. Yet, from what I could see, Agent Brown looked rather displeased with my distaste. Was it that bad to listen to? All I heard was metallic ringing and garbage through the sound system, Agent Brown. If that's the best humanity has to offer with music, I'll stick with Milan music, I said, looking straight ahead. I was a bit shocked, honestly, that none of the humans on the sidewalk seemed to notice that there was an alien in the shuttle that was playing loud, vile music. Those darker windows really did assist in keeping unwanted eyes away, it would seem. Metallic ringing and garbage, he asked, appalled at my statement as the hospital came into view in the distance. What next, Skalon? Gonna tell me to do my homework and go to bed early for church in the morning? What? I questioned. Church? Homework? My question only seemed to make the human cackle while he proceeded to make his way to the large stone structure where many humans had their own land shuttles stationed. Nothing, old man. Nothing at all, he said, pulling up to a barricaded lot where a man in an all-grey uniform with a yellow badge on the right sleeve. Agent Brown didn't even have to step out of the shuttle to greet this human before the barricade was lifted. Then he drove into the forbidden lot, which was filled with land shuttles of far better quality than most of the ones I saw on the way here. I looked towards Agent Brown to ask why, but as he parked his shuttle in a yellow outline and powered down the engine, the only thing I could think of was stretching my legs. I immediately opened the shuttle door, unfastened my safety harness, and lurched out of the shuttle, the gravity still taking its toll on my body as I stumbled on the stone floor. Agent Brown stepped out the shuttle next, humming as he closed the door behind him, moving to me and shutting mine for me. Hope you're ready for a lot of questions and premature balding, Skalon, Brown mused, chuckling softly. I've dealt with hatchlings before, Brown. I'm sure I can handle small, sick humans, I replied. Agent Brown drew his hand towards the entrance of the hospital. Then by all means, prove it. The hospital has been secured. Let's see you handle it. I swallowed, my green scales brilliantly shining. Surely, human children wouldn't be too much to handle. Right? Right? By the gods, if I thought the rock music was loud, nothing, I repeat, nothing in the vast cosmos of everything could match the sheer volume of a shrieking human child. This place was filled with many screaming human children. Sure, it was understandable why they were so excited. I was a new, exciting thing in a world filled with new and exciting things. It was what made children so endearing. The eagerness to explore and learn new things. But human children, they were all of that with a dash of mania and energy. Yet those were the ones that could walk and talk. As I was led by some of the very timid staff towards their own quarters, so that I could wash and be made sterile, I saw some of the worst cases. Bedridden children. Children unable to breathe on their own. Children unable to eat on their own. Children whose organs were failing faster than the human doctors could fix. It was a bittersweet environment. Even as these children withered away, not a single one seemed to lose hope they wouldn't die. There wasn't a soul in this hospital resigned to their own death, even if their prognosis told the opposite. Even human children could not know failure. There were many eyes and hushed whispers around me. Agent Brown kept a close eye on me, as well as a few other security guards that patrolled the area. I would be unharmed. Still, I was somewhat confused as to how they all had all of their equipment at the ready for me. Agent Brown had worked quickly, it would seem. Still, it was somewhat jarring that they had gloves made in respect to my own anatomy. They fit quite nicely, and the entire time I sterilized and made myself ready for examination. The nagging feeling of something not quite being right filled my mind. It was all far too convenient. when I was fully prepared to meet with the first child, a little girl struggling with bone marrow mutation. I was handed a fully documented chart on her case history, as well as having a human doctor tell me all about her condition. I wasn't quite paying attention to begin with, but as the doctor continued, my interest slowly shifted away from the chart I was studying to the human's explanation. This was someone who had no advanced hardware or software to read into genetic anomalies of patients with cases like this. And yet, this woman, whose hair was grey as a cloud, knew nearly every single detail of the disease the child suffered from. A disease known as acute lymphocytic leukemia. A mutation was a mutation, no matter what you decided to call it. So, she has been taking well to the chemo so far, the doctor said, her nerves seeming to ease as she gazed at the patient. A little human child, female, who had lost all of her hair due to the only treatment available. It was obliterating her body, this chemotherapy, and I was getting more and more disgusted the more I learned about it. Well, considering you are actually bombarding this child's body with toxins and radiation, I'd say she looks pretty good, I muttered from behind my mask, eyeing the chart once more. I sighed, looking over to the doctor, my scales orange. May I attempt to treat her, doctor? I asked, looking behind us for a moment to see the crowd of doctors and staff simply staring at me. What? Hadn't these primitives seen a Valan scholar before? The doctor sighed, smiling sadly as she looked at the sleepy, bald girl. I really wish I could say yes, she sighed, giving a mournful tone. I'd love nothing more than to have some actual angel swoop in here and save all of these kids. It'd get them out of this damned hospital. And maybe give me some vacation time, she teased, giggling lightly. Unfortunately, for safety purposes, I can't let you do that. One look at you and I can see a doctor. We know our own kind. But if you screw up and that little girl dies, not only is this entire hospital at risk, but I have to live with the guilt of knowing I let some alien come in here and treat our children, she admitted, turning around to peer at me with sad, beautiful blue eyes. So you're saying you don't trust me? I asked, wondering why I was brought all the way here to help treat these children if the doctors would tell me no the second I arrived here. You said you know I'm a doctor. Why not trust me? Aside from making a not-so-subtle entrance, what have I done to not earn your trust? That not only do I mean no harm, but I could very well save this girl's life, I said. I think I touched a nerve. You could save her life, but you don't know, the doctor replied, crossing her own arms. Her gaze shifted to the quickly growing crowd, a Tisk following suit. Don't you all have patients to see as well? She asked, and like actual magic, the large crowd scattered to the winds into different rooms of the hospital. It didn't stop some of the human children that could move freely from peeking their heads out of the doorways to stare at me. But at this point, I was used to being stared at. I do know, I replied, keeping my tone soft and as non-hostile as I could. It's a mutation. I've treated them before in my own species, I announced, causing the senior to laugh. Oh, have you now? Well, Ch.11 was it? Tell me what I haven't heard from 40 years of practicing medicine. Tell me how you would treat this, she demanded, leaning against the doorframe as if I was the one that made this child sick to begin with. I rolled my eyes, growing ever more tired of the hostile tones of nearly every human I met. I reached into my lab coat pocket, pulling free the phylactery I hid in my belongings before I was taken by the general. This is a biomaterials collection device. We call it a phylactery, I said, reaching into my other inner lab coat pocket to pull free my communications beacon, using it to link to my workstation in my ship. Each phylactery comes with a microscopic nanomachines capable of doing certain tasks within the body. Normally, they just pull apart the genetic information in a collected organic sample. But if they are, say, injected with proper instructions given to them, then they will fix the issue and be safely excreted out of the body when their task has been completed, I explained, looking over to the doctor who seemed, much to my surprise, understanding my explanation. I see. So you inject your nanomachines into the patient, and those nanomachines correct the error in the DNA causing the mutation? She questioned. I nodded in reply, causing the doctor to stare at the phylactery while I went about linking my mini workstation to it, retuning the medical nanomachines to do as I asked. I already have the basic template for human genetic structure on my workstation, so any blatant red flags such as tumors or mutations in the bone marrow should easily be picked up and removed, I stated, looking to the doctor with a pleading look. If the girl dies under my care, by all means, have me killed, or whatever it is your humans do with criminals. Just take my word. I can fix this human. The doctor looked at me, biting her lower lip in frustration and nervousness. Several years of training were going down the drain for her if she let me go through with this. Yet another thought crossed my mind as she debated whether or not to let me treat a patient. Besides, it was kind of the whole reason I was brought here. Do you really want to waste the agent's time? I asked, nodded my head over to Agent Brown, who was busy tapping away on his own communication device. Somehow the man knew that we were talking about him, one of his hands rising into the air as he gave the faintest of waves before becoming absorbed into his own electronic activities once again. I sighed in disdain. Way to be intimidating, Agent Brown. Were it not for these agents storming into my hospital and telling my doctors that some alien was going to be coming in to look at the sick kids here, I would have had you escorted out already, but... She trailed off, sighing herself, following with a shake of her head. You were given government clearance to treat human patients. I can disapprove all I want, but at the end of the day, the government wants you here. And if you're willing to help... She trailed off once more, resigning herself to her decision. I don't see why you can't at least try to help, she muttered. And with that, the recalibration of the nanomachines in the phylactery was set to eliminate any malignant mutations found in the human body when compared to the base genetic structure taken from the first human sample we gathered. I activated the phylactery, the needle extending outwards as I walked into the room. As I did so, the poor, bald, sick human girl opened her eyes to look at me. They were a vibrant green, and wide as the system stars as she finally realized who she was looking at. You're an alien, she whispered, her voice raspy and weak. My scales turned bright violet while I nodded in response. No creature deserved the kind of pain she was going through. I looked at her bedridden form for a few brief moments before I decided to do something unsanitary. I lowered my medical mask, revealing my face to the human child. I am, I replied, the girl giggling in response. You sound weird, she chirped, giggling profusely. It was a relief to see someone as sick as she was in such high spirits. Were any of our hatchlings subjected to the treatment these human doctors gave to children with her condition? Well, a weak voice and being restricted to bed rest would be the best results that we could hope for. I know, I do sound weird, I muttered, taking a few steps forwards, the claws on my feet tapping softly against the floor. Her green eyes stared holes into me, as if she was looking into my very soul as I approached. You're pretty, too, she beamed, showing off a big smile and her juvenile set of teeth. I'm happy they sent a lady alien here. Lady alien. Humans with their sexual dimorphism. I gave a faint laugh as I looked at the phylactery in my hand, making sure everything was ready and sterile for administering the dose of nanomachines to the sick girl. I'm a male, boy alien, I corrected, laughing once more as I approached. The girl blinked, looking at me with confusion. But you're too pretty to be a boy, and your voice is too high. Do all boy aliens look like purple girl lizards? She asked. My scales shifted to a deep blue, my head turning around outside, where I saw the senior medical staff all cackling in the doorway. Did my species really look that much like what humans perceived as a woman? We all had the same body type. We were not as bulky as human males were. I sighed audibly, shaking my head. Yes, I could see where the human girl was coming from. Well, most of my kind do look very similar. How girls and boys look mostly the same, I said, trying to keep my composure despite the immature giggling from the adults in the hospital. The girl's eyes widened, filling with what I could only assume was childlike wonder. Really? You're all that pretty? She asked, growing giddier and giddier. I wish I was like that, she muttered, her giddiness fading into what I assumed was sorrow. I tilted my head as the dosage of nanomachines finished calibrating to treat the small human. You do? I asked, tilting my head to the side as my scales swiftly changed back to their remorseful violet. Why do you want to be like us? I asked, trying my best to give my softest voice possible. Don't you think we're strange? No, I think you're pretty. You have long hair and change colors. It's so cool, she exclaimed, causing my scales to swirl with yellow in joy. Out of all the humans I've met, it was a sick child that made me feel the most welcome on Earth. I looked at your records to see how you were sick. Your name is Lily, right? I asked, laying one of my hands on the bed. She looked at my gloved hand curiously for a moment, prodding at the scales under the synthetic material with a small index finger. Mm-hmm, she replied, eyes glued to my swirling violet and yellow scales. Well, my name is Skalon, but you can call me Lad, because we're friends, I chimed in, causing the girl's eyes to widen and look up at me with wonder. We are? She asked, as I took her arm in my hand. I nodded quickly, the yellow on my scales growing brighter. We sure are, I reassured, taking the phylactery and placing the end towards the arm. I'm going to help you make you feel better, too. So, make sure you hold very still, I instructed. She nodded quickly, her body going rigid as she attempted to toughen up for a new alien friend. It was an adorable sight. In a flash, the needle of the phylactery jammed into her flesh, administering a dose of nanomachines, and withdrew into a sterilizing compound in the phylactery before Lily had time to react to the puncture. She blinked a few times, looking at her arm, then at me, then back at her arm again. Did you help? She asked, somewhat confused. I blinked in surprise. Did she not feel it? I couldn't help but chuckle. Deja vu hitting quite quickly after remembering that the astronaut didn't even flinch from the same needle either. I did. You did really well, I exclaimed, the girl smiling once more before giving off a yawn. Hey, you said you wanted to be an alien, right? I asked, giving the girl a compassionate look. She nodded softly, head resting on her pillow again. Sleep would claim this girl soon as the nanomachines went to work. Uh-huh, she replied. I stood up, checking my phylactery to ensure that it was sterilized before placing it in my lab coat pocket once more after the needle had retreated back into its rest. Then how about an alien name? I mused. She nodded quickly, causing me to give a faint laugh at the sight of the tired girl's unyielding excitement. Whenever you talk to an alien like me, you can tell them Scholar Skalon said your name for us is Skalili. Okay? I asked, moving back towards the doorway. She nodded, her eyes slowly closing, but a smile remaining on her lips as sleep claimed the cancer-ridden girl. As I walked outside of her room, I looked towards the medical director that had spoken to me before, my scales turning completely yellow. So, give it about a quarter of a rotation, 6 hours, and the mutation should be gone, I said, causing her jaw to drop. 6 hours? 6 hours. She paused, shrugging her shoulders as she pointed down the hall. Well, if you're right and she passes our tests in 6 hours, mind helping us with the other kids here? She requested, giving me a hopeful look. The first look of compassion and camaraderie I saw from an adult that questioned my species' intentions. I looked down the hall and my scales turned green. There must have been hundreds of rooms in this medical facility. Surely they didn't mean for me to do everything tonight. Yes, they did mean for that. Humans are, if anything, quite impatient. End of chapter. The algorithm reckons you should be watching this video next, and I recommend that you should be always watching my video. So, clickety-click with energy! And yes, clicking that does help the channel. Thank you very much. I would just quickly like to give thanks to our Tier 5 members: Elithia, Barky, Fudicule, Meridian 117, Cam Maxwell, Casper Arnholtz, Albard and Gusta, Savage Patch Papa, and Lord Azrakal.